I bought this super cheap Class A amplifier on AliExpress, and I'm not super optimistic that it's going to be any good. But I was assured by one of my viewers that this is the best deal in hi-fi. Did I just waste $250? Or is this the biggest secret in hi-fi? Sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and we're gonna go through this together. We're gonna unbox it, we're gonna listen to it, and then I'm gonna give my thoughts on the A1 Clone Class A amp. Coming directly from the Far East is the, what is it? BRZ Hi-Fi A1 Clone amplifier. I didn't know anything about this amplifier. I was doing a couple of live streams, and one of my viewers, Ancient Aliens 815, thank you so much for being vigilant and persistent about me getting this amplifier in. I bought it directly from AliExpress. And I know people use AliExpress all the time, but it's not something that I really feel comfortable with. But late one night, I bought one, and I actually bought two because I didn't understand how to use AliExpress's website. But to their credit, I did get refunded for one of the amps. Apparently, this is an older amp design that the patents have run out. It's an older amp, but it still works. I was about ready to approve it. What movie is that from? I've listened to a few Class A amplifiers, and generally speaking, they're a little bit heavier than this one. This one claims to put out 20 watts of pure Class A yumminess. Why don't we unbox it and take a look? Well, it's not built terribly. This is typical Chinese construction though. On the surface, it feels fairly substantial. Get your heat sink fins on the side, which are good, but you can tell there's probably just a little bit left off of the machining when it comes to not cutting yourselves. Although, I don't think I'm going to cut myself on this. I don't love it that it says Krell on the front. That seems a little bit weird to me. But this thing, I can barely hold it up with one hand. And it does have metal construction all over. Push button right here. Metal knobs held on with a set screw. On the back, the binding posts are decent. These binding posts look very similar to the stuff that Shit uses on, well, their amplifiers. But you can tell these are just way cheaper. They look the same, but they're way cheaper. But all in all, I will say with 100% confidence that a $175 product, now granted you have to pay $75 to get shipping, a $250 product all in, this is built extremely well, to the point where I could see some DIY outfits selling just the chassis for $250. Fairly Spartan on the front. You have one volume knob for the left, one volume knob for the right, a power right there. For whatever reason, some inset things. You have cooling on the top, cooling on the bottom, and the fins on the side. Let's see what the manual looks like. You get a BRZ Hi-Fi warranty card, I assume, that's not filled out. So you get the card. Whether or not you get any warranty service, I have no idea. You have this that is in all Chinese. Okay. Then you have the BRZ, all Chinese. Oh, wait a minute. We have a 4 to 8 ohms. We have 105 dB, which I don't know if that is dynamic range. 20 watts into 8 ohms, 25 watts into 4 ohms. I can get that. But yeah, it's all in Chinese. And then you get this tag. It's all in Chinese, except for the BRZ hi-fi part. What? So this font looks like something, and I can't put my finger on it. Reminds me of the Pile font, which is kind of funny. Kind of funny. I am moving my favorite Unico Primo $2,000 integrated amp and a Skit Kara preamp from the top shelf to the bottom shelf, so I can put the A1 clone amp up there. I'm going to put the Sony SSCS5s on these for the initial listening, because if something goes wrong with this amplifier, if it blows up a speaker, I don't want it to be my $1,500 Sonus Faber speaker. I would rather it be a Sony SSCS5 that costs about $130. And I'm going to use the Weem Pro as a front end for this. Maybe a DAC, I don't know. Let's find out. Let's experience this together. Speakers hooked up, source hooked up. Time to plug it in. Moment of truth. They're blinking. Ah, I heard a relay. Look at that. Kind of impressed. It actually sounds like a real hi-fi component when it turns on. We'll see what it sounds like now. My kids are home on fall break and they're being loud. Updating the Weem Pro right now, but we need to think about something here. So we have 20 watts of Class A, claimed Class A, and I would believe it because we may look under the hood, but there's a bunch of filter caps. There's a big, fairly, I mean, for the size of the component, there's a big toroidal transformer. So we have $250 in the amp, $150 in the streamer, which can also control volume, so it can also be a preamp. So that's $400, and then a pair of $120, $130, $150 speakers. So all in on this thing, we're at $550 with the streamer and room correction. And it's not Class D, it's Class A, old school Class A. Alright, we got sound. I was listening to some Alanis Morissette, King of Pain. I've got the Sonys running, and it's not doing much for me. I ran the room correction on the Weem, and I got this wonky kind of going, pulsating in and out, and so I was worried that was the amp, and I turned the room correction off because I'm using the variable voltage output on the Weem Pro to run volume duty. I'm using the A1 clone as just a power amp. I don't know if the Sonys are the best match for this amplifier. And I guess I'm going to put the Sonus Faber on there. Still a little bit reticent to do that. Sonically, it kind of reminds me of the Skit Agir. I don't remember what the power ratings were on the Agir, but I don't think it's too far off from that 20 watt rating. I've almost got this full tilt on the A1 clone, and I don't hear any distortion. I'm in the office fairly close though, maybe 5-6 feet away, and I'm struggling to get this to hit 80 dB with the Sonys. With a more efficient speaker, I think you could probably get it a little bit louder, but that 20 watts is kind of making sense. One thing I will say about this amplifier is it's not beefy on the bottom end. It is very airy. This reminds me a bit of a tube amp, but way better. Some sweetness in the top end, some sweetness in the mid-range. I played Intergalactic though, and there was no at all. But there's richness, there's fullness there on the bottom. But I think with 20 watts of pure Class A power, I don't think it's gonna drop bombs. I could definitely see someone using something like the Weem Ultra with a subwoofer output, because this amplifier does sound good. I have no idea about the longevity of this thing. I have no idea whether or not it's going to burn up tomorrow. But today, as it is, with no burn-in for the electronics, I'm surprised. I don't love the Krell sticker on the front, and I don't know if that's just them trying to say this is a Krell amplifier and it's not, or them giving homage to Krell. I don't know if this is a Krell design. I don't know anything about this amplifier, and if you do, put it in the comments. Under the hood, this thing is fairly simple. 4 big caps per channel. Looks like some, just a few resistors in here. Some smaller capacitors. This reminds me of the Amp Camp kit. If you're a little bit of a DIYer, if you like to upgrade things, this looks like a platform that someone could have a lot of fun on. It does get a little warm too when you're playing it. But look at this thing. Old school. Old school. I don't know if these caps are, I don't know what grade of caps these are, right? Chances are this thing coming in at $175. People need to have reasonable expectations, but this is a fun amp. What are my final thoughts? Well, I mean, it's cool. It's okay. It's kind of a novelty. I don't particularly love this sound. It's a little bit mid-range forward. This reminds me a lot of tube amplifiers. For me, this type of amplifier is going to be good for singer-songwriter stuff. For rock and roll, it just pushes the mid-range too forward for me and doesn't have enough oomph on the bottom, for stuff that I like. But that's just me. I think if somebody is into more acoustic stuff, then this amplifier on its own, I think, would be a lot of fun. If you do like a little bit of bass, if you are into rock and roll, I think you need something on the front end of this that you can attach a subwoofer to. Weem Ultra, I think, would be a fun combo with this. You also have to consider the sensitivity on your speakers and the loudness volume that you like to listen to, the SPL. 85, this is not gonna hit 85. With bookshelf speakers that are a little bit harder to drive. If your expectations are in check, I think this is a fun amplifier. It wouldn't be my amplifier for everything. This might be a near field amplifier, but even in the near field, I'm still gonna want a little bit more heft on the bottom. If you know more about this amp, put it in the comments. But when I look under the hood, this looks like an Amp Camp kit. Obviously, this is an older design, a very old design, but it was good back then. I think it's good now for certain type of listeners. But for $250, I mean, it's almost worth it just to have fun and explore. I have no idea about the longevity of this thing. I have no idea about the parts that are inside this thing. And I would imagine at $175 retail, that you're probably not going to be getting the best components. But this is kind of like a kit amp. So if you want to have fun, if you want to change up a bunch of stuff on the inside, then you can do it. I don't think this is for most audiophiles, but I think it's definitely for some audiophiles. If you have any experience with this, or you know of places where I imagine this thing has a cult following. I imagine there's all sorts of DIY things you can do. Put it in the comments where someone could find that information. All in all, I'm a little bit impressed. It's fun to have something a little bit different than all of the Class D amplifiers come through. Going all the way back old school to Class A. If you liked this video, you should check out the video I just did on the ELAC Debut 3s, which I actually think would be a great pairing with this because that's a little bit warmer speaker. So this pushes things a little bit forward in the mids, a little bit sweet on the highs. Probably a great combination. Check it out here or here. If you want to become part of the best hi-fi community on the planet, check out my Patreon, patreon.com/cheapaudioman. Sunday night Zooms. We have Discord group. We have a Facebook group. It's a bunch of fun. Great people. So don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu. Binge listen maybe through your new A1 Cologne amplifier that says Krell on the front and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, oh, by the way, if this is them trying to be Krell, I don't like that. I think that's terrible. But the fonts don't seem to be the same. Anyway, binge listen and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.